Ever walked into a room where everyone's celebrating the one thing you supposedly failed at? That was me last night, just another ghost in a glitter-covered banquet hall, pretending the knife between my ribs was part of the dress code. If you've ever been written off by the very people who raised you, buckle up. This revenge story starts with a toast that tasted like battery acid, and it only gets sharper from here. Mom's text had arrived that morning, no emojis, no can't wait to see you, just dinner for Haley's promotion. 1800, don't dress weird, classic Darlene Rowan efficiency, logistics over love. So I showed up in a gray button-down and dark slacks, neutral enough to fade into the wallpaper. The rented hall pulsed with brass band marches. Framed photos of my sister Haley in crisp cadet whites lined every table. My own name was nowhere. When I looked for a seat, I found 12 engraved place cards. None said Elise. Dad intercepted me near the punch bowl, glass in hand, pride lighting his face like a flood lamp. "Kiddo, what are you doing these days? Hospitality?" He was already turning back to the crowd before I could answer. The question wasn't curiosity, it was punctuation. A period at the end of my relevance. A waiter brushed past, arms loaded with champagne flutes. Mom waved him over, plucked two, and pressed one into Haley's hand. "To our future colonel," she announced. Applause rippled through relatives I barely recognized. My Uncle Lou gave me a sympathetic shrug, the kind people reserve for shelter dogs. "Could you grab more forks, Elise?" Mom asked without eye contact. "We're short on the dessert table." There were at least 4 cousins closer to the kitchen, but convenience isn't the point when the failure is available. I smiled, tight, polite, and headed for the service door, muscle memory guiding each step. Fetch, pour, retreat, repeat. Inside the prep kitchen, I let the stainless steel silence cool my cheeks. 10 years of Black Ops briefings, 4 overseas extractions, 1 commendation buried under layers of ciphered clearance, all distilled to this moment, carrying cutlery to a family that thought I'd dropped out of ROC because I couldn't handle the heat. They never asked why. They never knew James Rowan signed the paperwork that erased me from that academy, trading my slot for Haley's brighter shine. I returned with forks, placed them quietly, and took the only open spot, an unfolded chair by the coat rack, half in the hallway. The applause swelled again as Haley raised her glass. Nobody looked my way, and that was fine. The less they saw now, the louder the silence would echo later. I watched, expression calm, as my sister basked under chandeliers. The war inside me stayed classified, at least for tonight. Tomorrow, the field would change. The funny thing about being erased, you start to believe you were never there in the first place. After the party, I sat in my rental, headlights off, parked across the street from the house I grew up in. Same cracked porch step, same crooked shutters, same mailbox that leans left like Dad's politics. But I didn't go inside. I just stared, like a stranger trying to remember someone else's life. 15 years ago, I left that house thinking I'd failed. I'd collapsed midway through ROC training. Panic attacks, insomnia, blackout migraines. The school labeled me a liability. My parents called it embarrassment. Not once did they ask what broke me. They just assumed it was weakness, that I wasn't cut out for service like Haley. But here's what they never knew. 2 weeks after I was dismissed, I enlisted under an intelligence contract so classified my own file self-deletes every 90 days. I trained under code names, lived under false identities, and eventually I earned command, not of a squad, but of an entire Black Ops protocol. My name? Redacted. My missions? Disavowed. My value? Immeasurable. And yet, back home, I was still the dropout. Still the girl who gave up. You ever notice how some people only remember your lowest moment, like they cling to it just to feel taller? Let me ask you something. If your own family rewrote your story without ever asking for the truth, would you correct them? Or would you let them live in the lie because it's easier than hearing the real version? Drop a comment if you've ever felt like someone else edited your story without permission. I want to know I'm not the only one. I eventually drove to base housing. No lights in my room. I liked it that way. The darkness reminded me I was still useful, still needed. In the corner was my duffel, standard issue, stitched tight with burn-proof threading. Inside, a small device blinked softly, a field receiver tied to Phantom Arc. My next assignment was already waiting. I tapped the screen. Coordinates, access clearance, mission brief. All silent. All mine. I didn't have medals hanging on my parents' mantle. I didn't have my face in those photo collages they brag about at barbecues. But I had intel stamped with words like critical, high value, non-disclosable. That was enough. Still, I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting. If I said that night, watching Haley toast to her next promotion while I fetched forks, I didn't want someone, anyone, to look me in the eye and say, "You mattered too." But that's not why I do what I do. Because when you've built your life in the shadows, your reward isn't recognition. It's the silence after a mission's complete. The brief pause before the world keeps turning. And knowing, even if no one claps, someone out there is still breathing because of you. That's enough. For now. I arrived at Fort Irwin just past 0700. The Mojave heat hadn't kicked in yet, but you could feel it waiting, like a loaded weapon. I wore a simple black field jacket, tactical pants, no insignia. Just a visitor badge clipped to my lapel with an encrypted ID number. No name, no rank, no unit. That's how it works when you move through the shadows. You're not there to be seen, you're there to see. Today, I wasn't on duty, just here to observe cadet evaluations. That's what the papers said, but unofficially, I was here because I needed to know who Haley had become outside the curated spotlight our parents loved so much. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted her to see me, really see me, for the first time in her life. The drill yard buzzed with shouts and boots hitting dirt. Haley stood center formation, commanding a group of fresh recruits. Her posture, textbook. Her voice, steady. Her uniform, pressed to perfection. The Rowan legacy in full display. I took a seat in the second row of the bleachers behind two civilian contractors and an admin who kept checking her watch. I kept my head down, no eye contact. I'd become good at blending in, almost too good. Then something shifted. Drill Sergeant Jason Bruckner, legend on base, known for chewing out colonels like they were interns, was pacing the perimeter, shouting corrections. But suddenly, his voice caught. His boots stopped mid-step. His gaze scanned the bleachers and locked on me. I knew the second it happened. His spine straightened, his jaw squared. And then, 2 strides forward, a full stop, heels clicked together. He saluted. "Commander Rowan, ma'am, I wasn't informed you'd be present." The words dropped like a grenade. The recruits froze. Officers glanced sideways. And Haley turned, confusion blooming on her face until it collided with recognition. She blinked, dropped her practice rifle. The clatter against the pavement echoed like thunder. No one said a word. I stayed seated, calm, quiet. "I'm here unofficially," I said. "Carry on." Bruckner gave a crisp nod, pivoted, and resumed formation drills like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. The whispers started immediately, soft at first, then swelling like wind in dry grass. "Commander Rowan? Her sister's a general? Wait, the dropout?" Haley didn't say anything, just stood there, paralyzed in uniform, eyes darting back to me. Not with anger, not even shame, just disbelief. Like the image she'd carried for years had cracked in one clean hit. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I simply stood and walked out through the side gate. And if anyone had been watching closely, they would have seen it, just before I disappeared behind the steel fencing. A flicker of something in my eyes, not triumph, just the quiet satisfaction of finally being seen. Not as a sister, not as a disappointment, but as someone they never bothered to ask about. The breach alert came in at 02:14. It wasn't loud, just a soft vibration on the field receiver I kept stashed behind a false panel in my barracks locker. I was still half-dressed, halfway through taking off my boots. But the second I saw the signal, a flagged access attempt on my personal archive, I froze. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a drill. Someone had tried to open the encrypted drive I left behind, the one buried deep in my old duffel, the one I'd given to Haley last Christmas. I accessed the log through a secured terminal. Coordinates bounced, masked IPs, but the digital fingerprint was there, clumsy, impatient, untrained. Then I traced it. Origin, Spokane. Source node, private residential Wi-Fi. Address, 1128 Concord Street, my parents' house. My stomach turned, not because they found the device, but because they tried to erase something. They hadn't opened it to learn who I'd become. They weren't curious. They were trying to wipe it clean. I decrypted the partial file they touched. It was old, one of the first records I ever kept after getting into Phantom Arc. Not about combat, not about intelligence, about ROC. My removal, the actual signed memo, time-stamped, verified, James Rowan, father, primary contact. Authorized signatory for withdrawal of scholarship on mental fitness concerns. The signature was his, not mine. I didn't leave ROC. He pulled me out. The rest of the file included a transcript. Dad on a call with a former colleague. Elise doesn't have the temperament. Haley's the better bet. If someone's going to carry the Rowan name into the military, it needs to be her. We can't afford Elise bringing down the legacy. It wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. I'd been sacrificed for branding. They let me believe I failed. Let me spiral. Let me walk into the dark alone, while they toasted Haley and slept just fine under the illusion they did what was best. And now that I'd climbed higher than they ever imagined, they were afraid. Afraid the truth would surface, that people might ask, "Where's the other Rowan daughter?" So they reached for the one thing they thought they could still control, the erasure. But I wasn't a scared cadet anymore. I was a commander. I logged the breach, encrypted the audit, filed a silent protocol escalation to Fort Irwin's Cyber Defense Unit. I didn't name names, not yet, but I flagged the access as a Tier 2 violation, pending classification review, because this wasn't just a family secret anymore. It was federal interference. And if they wanted to play with ghosts, they were about to find out exactly who they raised. Not a dropout, not a disappointment, but a damn storm wrapped in quiet. The tribunal room smelled like processed wood and fluorescent tension. I wasn't in uniform, just a navy suit, clean lines, no insignia, no armor, no shield, only the truth. 3 officers sat behind the panel, intel, legal, and ethics. Major Cecilia Penn chaired the hearing, cold, unreadable. I respected that. The breach report sat printed in front of them, pages of metadata, access trails, and timestamps, all pointing to a device registered to me, a device that led straight to an unauthorized access from my parents' home. Major Penn spoke first. "Commander Rowan, you've logged this breach as internal sabotage. Do you stand by that classification?" "I do," I said, steady. "And I can identify the source." Her pen paused mid-air. "Proceed." I laid the folder on the table. Inside, a printout of the call transcript, the withdrawal form from ROC, and the full audit trail of the deleted access attempt. "I wasn't removed from ROC for mental instability," I said. "That was fabricated. By my father, he rerouted my scholarship to my younger sister. Quietly, officially, he erased me so Haley could shine brighter." They didn't flinch, but something in the room shifted. That quiet kind of discomfort only truth can bring. "I'm not here for sympathy," I continued. "I'm here because that same man tried to delete the record, to erase the evidence of what he did, to maintain his version of legacy. That's not a family decision. That's obstruction of a federal clearance program." Penn spoke carefully. "You chose not to disclose this for over a decade. Why now?" I met her gaze. "Because I've never needed recognition. I needed peace. But erasing my existence, that's not peace. That's betrayal." There was silence, not cold, just still. "I didn't come to ruin my family. I added. I came to protect what they tried to destroy. Integrity, quiet strength, the kind they never taught me because they never saw it in me. Penn nodded once. She didn't thank me. She didn't smile. She just said, "This hearing is adjourned. Commander Rowan, your record stands, and so do you." That was enough. Not applause, not vindication, just being seen for who I always was. Even when no one else had the courage to look. Fort Walker's main auditorium held 300 uniforms and twice as many expectations. I stepped onto the stage in full dress blues, buttons gleaming, chest bare of medals by choice. Behind me, a single slide glowed white with 5 words, "Courage in the Quiet." I didn't clear my throat or thank the committee. I just spoke. Most people measure honor by how loud the applause is when they finish a fight. I measure it by how quietly the people I protected sleep at night. The room stilled. No rustle of programs, no awkward coughs, just the hush that says we're listening. I told them about unseen operations, about saying wait when a drone strike's crosshairs hovered over a child, about walking away from credit because the aftermath would have painted innocent names in crossfire red. I never named my parents. I didn't have to. Every officer in the audience had faced that moment when someone they loved doubted their path. The story wrote itself between my sentences. Legacy, I said, isn't what the world writes about you. It's what you refuse to erase, no matter how convenient forgetting might be. From the first row, Haley rose. She was in service khakis, no pomp, hair pulled back. She raised her hand in a perfect salute, no ceremony, just blood and respect. The gesture rippled through the auditorium. Cadets followed, then majors, then a general I once briefed in a windowless bunker. It sounded like thunder made of fabric. I closed my speech with a single refusal. I've been offered medals today. I decline, not because I'm ungrateful, but because the moment one person's life has to dim for my ribbon to shine. The medal turns to lead. Keep it. Use the budget to resupply the night vision goggles our recon units keep requesting. Laughter, quiet but genuine, broke the tension. The standing salute held until I left the stage. Outside, morning sun pooled gold over the parade ground. Haley caught up, handed me a small silver pin, an unofficial badge given to leaders who choose people over prestige. "Wear it?" she asked. "Keep it," I said, curling her fingers around it. "Earn it your own way." She smiled, eyes bright but steady. For the first time, we were sisters without shadows. Your voice matters. Have you ever walked away from credit or taken a smaller spotlight to protect something bigger than yourself? Tell me below. I read every story, and you never know who else needs to hear yours today.